Hi everyone, this is Margaret Manning with 60 and Me. This is the place where women over 60 come to be inspired. My guest today is Kathleen Petticourt. Kathleen is the founder and the editor of Live and Invest Overseas. It's a great publication, and she's spent 30 years of her life traveling the world to find best places to live and retire in. Welcome, Kathleen.
Hello, very good to be here. Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you here. We've got some questions from our community of women over 60 who are thinking about doing what you've done, picking up and moving to a brand new place in the world and starting a new life, and either investing in property or renting, or just having a complete reinvention.
Great. Sounds like a great idea to me.
Okay, so we'd like you to give us a bit of help here. A lot of women in our community are, for whatever reason, single. Many have been divorced. Other ladies have lost their husbands, or some have just never married. And we've got, women on their own, strong, independent women. So that's a good place to start, maybe. But they are looking to think about moving abroad. And I'd love you to tell us, in your opinion, what are some of the things that they need to consider? And maybe give us some examples of places that you think are particularly good for single women over 60.
Okay. I guess in this context, of course, safety is key. Safety is critical. And there are loads of places where you could go and you wouldn't have to worry about safety. But there are also lots of places you might be thinking about where I wouldn't recommend a woman on her own go, because why risk it? Why tempt fate?
Yes.
There are loads of good options where you don't have to take that risk. And that's probably the one primary point I would make that is different from the advice I would give to anyone thinking about doing this. So I think the good places, frankly, make sense because they just make sense and they have so much to offer. And so a woman at this stage shouldn't think that she should limit her thinking because I'm a woman on my own, and so what are my options? I think your options are no more restricted than anyone else for the most part.
Okay.
But I would say that some of the best choices for a woman like this, especially making this move on her own, would be a city, and a big city would be better. So if I were to say my top recommendation in this context would be Paris. Paris is just an amazing city. And what woman wouldn't love to spend time in Paris? I have trouble imagining who that would be. I mean, even if it weren't your thing and you didn't want to live there forever, but even for a while, Paris just has so much to offer. It's so beautiful. It's so romantic. It can be so much more affordable than you might fear it is. There's so much to do, endless things to do, and loads of other single women there doing loads of interesting things. So it's one place in the world where you could easily find, through social media, etc., loads of single women, single older women, doing things together and spending time together in English and in French. But I think it would be the number one choice for a woman on her own.
Okay.
And then beyond that, I would say other big cities like Barcelona could also make a lot of sense. Other big cities across Europe just have so much to offer in terms of things to do. So you wouldn't be sitting home twiddling your thumbs and becoming frustrated and bored and lonely, because there would just always be something you could go out and do.
Okay, so you've chosen 2 European cities to start with, and I mean, I live in Europe myself, so I do know that they are not, at least in these stereotype of Paris is not as an inexpensive place to live.
It's not a budget destination.
So
for sure.
we put that one to the side. And if you're looking to move to another country and you have a good pension or you have savings, then Paris or Barcelona would be great choices. What about budget locations? I know that, for example, you've said Portugal is a really good choice for investing. More broadly.
For real estate and for lifestyle, it's very affordable. And I think Lisbon would be a great choice. Very similar, for all the similar reasons as Barcelona say. Lisbon is a great city, loads to do there. And I think that's the main thing, is that a woman making a move like this on her own just wants to be sure that there are going to be things to do that she'll enjoy doing.
Right, and you can get right into it, yeah.
Yeah,
because
the
other
then
thing,
just put yourself out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, you mentioned, I think, an area in south of France. Is it Languedoc?
Languedoc.
Languedoc, which
Languedoc,
is near Bordeaux, I think.
And frankly, I wouldn't recommend that strongly in this context.
Okay, good
It's a
to know.
great town. I love it, and it's a great place to go. But for a single woman, I think it's kind of sleepy. There isn't a lot going on there. And so if you're going with someone and, you make your own life, but if you're moving on your own, I think you want to prioritize places where there's a life you can just connect to.
Okay. So another thing I was going to ask you about is friendship. I mean, going to places where you can make friends right away. Now, in Europe, it's going to be a little easier because English is probably more spoken. But what if, for example, where would you recommend in Asia? And how would you suggest that you make friends in a country where English is not your language, the language?
Well, the big advantage we have today is social media. So no matter where you go, if there is any existing expat community of foreign retirees, they have a social media group. And so all you have to do is search around and find it. And what you'll find is expats who've made this move, and especially women are generally supportive, and expats are supportive too, but women even more so. Mm-hmm. Once you've made this move, you want to share your stories and you want to share what you've learned. And so what you find is expat communities, once they establish themselves, are very welcoming and very supportive because, who doesn't like telling the stories, the frustrating, funny stories about all the trials and tribulations you've had? And if you're telling them because they're funny and you're telling them because you want to help someone else avoid having the same mishaps you've had, that's a great thing to be able to tap into. And you really can do that now anywhere in the world where expats are hanging out. They're connected through social media.
Okay, now that's actually a really good reminder, and you're right. They've had the learning curve themselves. They've learned how to use the metro, how to use the buses. They know where the markets are that you can go to, or the shops that are least expensive. So that's a great idea. But let's go back to Asia for a second. Are there any places in Asia that you would feel comfortable recommending to a single woman?
I would recommend Thailand, Chiang Mai, for example. Mm-hmm. I know some women who have retired on their own to Chiang Mai, and it's a comfortable, developed enough place to live, and there are enough other expats there for you to be friends with, and medical care is good, which is another thing to be paying attention to. And so I think that's a really good choice in Asia for a woman.
Okay, so that's great. So Chiang Mai in Asia, Europe, probably Lisbon. What about Latin America?
I would say that Panama City, again, any city, but not every city in Latin America. So any city, because a lot of cities in Latin America don't have the kind of women-friendly infrastructure that cities in Europe generally would have. Right. So in Europe, you could live without a car, you could get around with public transportation, there are loads of things to do, you could go out and be busy and active and have a fun, very fulfilling life. In Latin America, that's not generally always the case. So, right. But in Panama City, there is some public transportation. You could get along here without a car. There is something here called Tu Chauffeur, which is the Panamanian answer to Uber. So, and it's very safe, and it's a convenient, safe, easy way to get all around. There's public transportation out beyond the city. So if you wanted to explore the rest of Panama beyond Panama City, there are great buses, etc. Mm-hmm. Mexico is a good choice for women on their own. Okay. Here, I would highlight two places in particular: Puerto Vallarta, although it was just hit by that very bad storm. That aside, Puerto Vallarta is a great choice in general, and especially for women on their own, because there's a culture of artists there. Yes. That's very welcoming, so that's very active, lots of painters and sculptors and other artists there, and that kind of community is fun to connect with because they're imaginative and they're creative and they're doing things, and that's very alive and well in Puerto Vallarta. There's another town in Mexico I would recommend, colonial town called Alamo, and this is in the mountains. Puerto Vallarta is on the coast. Alamo is in the mountains. Alamo is unique. It has a very big, I can't think of a number, but several thousand, maybe even more than several thousand foreign retirees, and they're mostly all women. So maybe 15 years ago, a few women discovered this, American women discovered this great colonial town in the mountains, nice weather, it's charming colonial architecture, great way of life, and really affordable. And they settled there. They invited friends who came, and slowly over the years, a pretty sizable community specifically of expat women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and older are there, and they're very much a part of the community. They have a, you know, they've crossed over so that they've become very accepted by the locals as part of the community. They have a say in what happens in the town in a good way, in a positive way, and they're making great changes there.
Is that near San Miguel Allende?
It's not. It's not exactly near San Miguel, but it's in the mountains. Mexico is so big.
Yes.
There are so many different choices there.
Yes. No, that's a really, I've never heard of that one. Do you know something, Kathleen? You should actually write an article on this. I think this would be really good because I think there are a lot of single women out there who are looking for places and wouldn't have thought of some of the suggestions that you've made. And
it's a great topic. Yeah.
But also, I think what you said too about safety, you're absolutely right. It's actually one of my concerns, even not concerns, but one of my considerations when I travel in general now. I only go to, if I'm not with someone or know I can, meet someone in a place, I will tend to stay away. And I think that the one thing you said that didn't surprise me, but it's good to reinforce, is cities. That cities are going to give you the safety, the community that you probably
not
need.
Only in the context of worrying about someone breaking in or something like that, but also in case of a medical emergency.
Yes.
So if you're out on your own in a rural part of a country or in a little beach town, but you're not even in the town, you're out on a more private beach on your own, that sounds idyllic and it can be, but it brings a risk. What if you take a fall? What if you have just some medical emergency and there's no one around?
Yeah, and the cell phone probably isn't going to work out there.
It won't always work. Exactly.
Oh, Kathleen, this has been so interesting, and I'm making notes. Alamo sounds fascinating. I'd just love to know more about it, so I think I'll do some research.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all that information. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathleen.